All right, everybody, here's a quick overview. Video number 1 about this thing called aerobic respiration. And at the very beginning of this chapter, of 3.2, they bring up this particular equation here, this thing that we've seen many times before, hopefully. And if not, this is aerobic respiration. This simple looking equation here describes how we would take something like oxygen and glucose, and through these various, this long set of reactions, we end up with carbon dioxide being produced, H2O, and energy in the form of ATP. So what does this reaction look like? Well, this is, like I said, this is like a summary. This is like a nicely sort of stated little reaction there. And what that really is this. This is aerobic respiration. And we're just going to quickly talk about just some general points about this. The way we've covered it is we've looked at it in terms of 4 stages: glycolysis, pyruvate oxidation, the Krebs cycle, and oxidative phosphorylation. You'll see that each of these 4 stages have unique features and will do certain things to our initial starting molecule called glucose. For the most part, a lot of our foods can be broken down into glucose. After this glucose quickly gets split off into smaller and smaller bits until finally we are left pretty much with nothing. All this glucose becomes is carbon dioxide. And as it gets converted into carbon dioxide, the stored energy in this glucose gets pulled out of it and into molecules such as ATP, like that, or as NADH, which comes in later when we convert that into ATP through a process called oxidative phosphorylation. Now, what I really like about this diagram is that it just nicely gives you an overview of aerobic respiration, and it tells you where these different stages take place. So for example, glycolysis takes place in the cytosol of the cell, but as this process moves forward, you start to see that this moves into the mitochondria. The next 2 stages, pyruvate oxidation as well as the Krebs cycle, takes place in the mitochondrial matrix. And then the final stage is this oxidative phosphorylation, which takes place across the inner mitochondrial membrane. Basically, if this all works properly and most efficiently, we could expect to see something like 36 ATP or 38 ATP if you're talking about a prokaryotic cell. But that is in an ideal situation. For the most part, you're probably going to see less than that, maybe low 30s, high 20s, hopefully. All right, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we start getting deeper into these 4 sections here. And yeah, that's the quick overview of aerobic respiration. Oh, and I almost forgot, don't forget, this whole entire process is a catabolic reaction. This is something that happens spontaneously. There is a bit of an investment of ATP in this first stage here. 2 ATP need to get this thing going, but after that, this thing just goes on. It is an exergonic, it is a catabolic reaction, and we can pretty much think that this is a spontaneous reaction because these stages will all take place. The only thing that needs to be in place for this is oxygen. This is why we call it aerobic respiration.